chased out of Sicily by
Yes.
Tortorina. So
Yep.
give us like kind of that dynamic. So these guys came over from like, some Sicily, maybe some are Sicilian American. Give us like how they fit in here and what was the dynamic with the Luccheses, the Gambinos, and the kind of Sicilians.
It's like I said, I don't want to speak out of school, and I only know a little background of what I was told.
Yeah,
So it's not, I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that. But yeah, that what's it, Totorina? He was a very vicious guy on the
yeah,
other side, and they went to war with them, and he just was annihilating them. I mean, left and right.
yeah,
He was killing them, and literally chased them. They had to pack their families up and come to
yeah,
America. And would they, because of guys like Joe Gambino and John Gambino, they, that was their tie. So they eventually, when they came here, they brought them in, and they
yeah,
brought them in and straightened them out with the Gambino family. So that's where, Frankie Cali, God rest his soul,
yeah.
and that whole clique,
True.
that
Yeah,
whole Sicilian faction came from, and they became very now they never now they were here and had all their connections on the other side in Sicily, and when he was done, and they caught him, they went back and now they were rock and rolling again. So they had that connection um, on the other side in here,
yeah.
and they were sending them over, and they were very, very strong, and they most likely still are to this day. I think they took a big loss with losing Frankie,
Yeah.
but he was just one guy, a low key, very smart, and knew totally to stay out of the limelight. And you kind of really never um, seen or heard from him,
Yeah.
which was the right way to do it.
So okay, so you give a little bit of color in terms of, and I appreciate that, John, because and one thing, one of the feedback that we got from you in your interviews is, a lot of people speak out of school or really stretch. You're very honest with like, hey, I know this or I don't know that.
Yeah,
So
because if
as
I don't
yeah,
know, I'm not gonna start, talking
agreed.
about things that I really don't know. 100, like I said, I've heard the story, and I know that's the story's pretty true, but the details and all of that, I don't have firsthand knowledge of. So
Agreed. Now, but one of the areas you do have a good knowledge base on, and we talked little bit about this offline. My home state in New Jersey, and of the crews in New Jersey, the Luccheses had a very strong crew, a crazy history where
yeah,
the captain, the bosses want to wipe everybody out. Tell us a little bit
yes.
about that, the dinner they wanted to set up, and all that stuff.
Well, once again, this was before my time,
Yeah,
and I'm always speaking about, what was passed down
yeah,
to me from guys that were around back then, and so you had the Jersey faction out there, and you had the Perners and the Tessettas.
yeah,
And at one time, they kind of referenced them like the Hatfields and McCoys, because they don't they get along that great either,
yeah,
cousins,
yeah, yeah,
and you know how that goes with
yeah,
families. And but they were making significant money in the gambling business out there, and loan sharking.
yeah,
And when Vic and Gas took over and were in power, it, it's very simple to know the answer why. They wanted to kill the whole crew. They were going to invite them to a dinner or a Christmas party and kill every single one of them.
Jesus,
And it wasn't, it was a bigger concern of like not how to do it, but where we were going to put the bodies. And and they got wind of it, and they kind of went a little bit on the lam and on the
yeah,
run until they could try to figure out and scramble to try to you know work it out. But it was over a bigger cut of money that they wanted, from what I heard.
interesting, interesting.
But I mean, I don't know much more of the details, what's behind it. Like I said, it wasn't my time, but I had heard enough to know, it was, they wanted and were demanding more of a cut out of the Jersey faction, because what probably happened is, for example, I'll use a small number. We make $100 a week, and then they come to find out that they're making $400 a week. And say, "Oh, really?" And it's something along those lines.
Now, your dealings, right? Did you have any dealings in Jersey, or or did you kind of more stay in your lane in Staten Island? Give us your geographical kind of.
I originally stood in Staten Island a lot,
Yeah.
and then I hooked up with the Long Island crew, and I stood in Long Island. But before the Long Island, in between that, I stood a lot in Jersey with the Pernas. So I stood in Jersey and spent a lot of time with them in Jersey.
Now, what about the Philly mob? Because I know I heard a story that there was a dinner, and I think you got invited or not invited, and Joe Merlino was there.
Yeah.
Give us kind of the backdrop of your Philly mob.
Yeah. So what had happened is that Joe Perna was going to have a dinner at his house, and he was inviting some of the Philly guys, one of which was Joey Molino, and he wanted us all to meet each other. And we were going, and matter of fact, I think it was me and Johnny Sideburns were going to go, and Johnny Sideburns had known Joey, Joey Molino, and we were going to go. So Big John got wind of it, and it's just typical with him. He didn't know Joey Molino, so he tells Joe Perna, "Listen, they can't go." He says, "But I'll come." He says, "They don't want them to come, and I'll come," because he used his position and Joe Molino's position, like, in other words, well, they shouldn't be meeting with him, and I'll come. But to me, so now Joe Perna felt bad, and he said, I don't know what to do, and I opened my mouth and told him, because I think he didn't want it to come out, and then he didn't want it to look like he kept it from John. So he winds up telling John, and then John, instead of just saying, "Well, I'll come too," which would have been fine, and that would have been the right way to handle things, he tells him that we're not going, and I go over to John, but I want to do it in a wise guy way, and I'll explain. Instead of going to John and telling him, "What's this I hear that I did it in another way," I went to him and I said to him, "I'm a little pissed off at this Joe Perna." So he says, "What's the matter? You were so close. What happened?" I said, "Well, I'm a little insulted." I said, "But, I'm pissed off about something he just did. He was a little disrespectful." "Really? What did he do to you?" I said, "Well, first he invited me to a dinner, and then he turns around and told me that, we're not going to have it. But then I find out he really is having it later." I said, "So what is he got a problem? He uninvited me? Like, what's the story? He says, No, I got to explain to you." His face turned red. I want to bring it out of him. So he says, "Look, I don't know if you noticed, but when we don't recognize the Philadelphia mob, we don't recognize Joey Molino as the boss." And I'm going to tell you where that comes from. That comes from Vic, because Vic was aware